We're going to be settling down real shortly and starting our third plenary of the week. Thank you so much for making it on time. I hope you guys are having a good time in this beautiful nation's capital, Nairobi. And as we settle down and wait for our moderator and panelists to get here, I just want to know a show of hands. How many people first time in Nairobi? Show of hands. How many people first time in Nairobi? One. Where are you from, sir? Where are you from? Côte d'Ivoire. Ah, bonne arrivée, mon frère. I love Abidjan, man. I love Abidjan. Anyone else first time in Nairobi? In the back there, yeah? Did I see a hand up? Good morning, Ismahan. Good morning. Anyone else first time in Nairobi? So you've all been here before then? All right. So none of you want to know recommendations for restaurants or some nice hot spots, bars, clubs, anything? Anyone else in the middle, first time in Nairobi? I see a hand up. I see a hand up over there. Do I see a hand up? It's good to know. It's good to know you've all been here before. It's a good thing. We're just moments away from beginning Plenary 3. Is that a hand I see up over there? First time in Nairobi? Where are you from? I can't hear you. Louder. What did she say? I can't hear you. First timers in Nairobi. Where are you from? Speak up. Philippines, Manila. All right. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. Thank you. What do you think of Nairobi? What do you think of Nairobi? You like it so far? Excellent. Anyone else? Anyone else first time in Kenya? Anybody else? You all love Nairobi, don't you? Keep coming back. That's the way it should be. Keep coming back. What about this side? Anybody first time in Nairobi? Is that a hand I see up? Where you from? From? Oh, what? I can't hear you, man. Cambodia? Cambodia. Nice, nice. What's that? Cambodia. That's cool. I'd love to go to Cambodia one day. Very nice. Is that Laos? Is that the capital? Is it Laos? I think so. Nice. Anybody else? First time in Nairobi. In the back, anybody first time in Nairobi? All right, we're moments away, folks. I'm going to call this room to order very shortly. Please take your seats. And we'll begin today's plenary. Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling the room to order. Excellencies, Dr. Eloafi, Executive Managing Director, CGIAR, and our CGIAR hosts, ambassadors, high commissioners, ministers, scientists from around the country, around the region, and around the world, innovators. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 3 of an amazing science week here on the UN campus in Nairobi, the only UN headquarters south of the global south. As I've been telling you all week, my name is Jeff Koinange, and I am your host all week. Hope you don't get too bored of me, but I'm here anyway. And I hope you guys are getting involved on social media because that's what drives the world these days. And if you're on Twitter or X, the hashtag we're all using this week is Science Week. Please use that. Please feel free to copy me if you get a chance. My handle is my name the other way around, so it's last name first, Koinange Jeff. If you copy me, I will repost to about 5 million of my followers, but I'm just saying. And we'll get this week going. Let's trend. Let's tell the world that the scientists are meeting in Nairobi this week. We've got a couple of sessions this morning, and they will be moderated by my good friend, Dr. Frans Swanepoel. And the title, the segment is entitled Targeting Transformation in Africa. We'll be doing both Africa and Latin America this morning. So the first stop will be Africa. I'd like to call the following on stage, Dr. Frans Swanepoel. He'll be the moderator. Please come on board. He's a research fellow in residence at the University of Pretoria. Welcome, Dr. Frans. And the panelists will include the following. Dr. Alioune Fall. He is a former chairperson, Director General, Institut Sénégalais des Résidences, Agence Agricole. Dr. Belafemi Oyewole, CEO, Pan-African Farmers Organization, or PAFO. Dr. Boubacar Mane, Director General, Africa Rice. Professor Cliff Dlamini, Executive Center for Coordination of Agricultural Research and Development for Southern Africa. That's CCR-DESA. Dr. Eliud Kiplimo Kirega, DG and CEO, CalRO. Dr. Julian Barungi, Program Officer, Association for Strengthening Agricultural Research in Eastern and Central Africa. Welcome our panelists, please. Dr. Swanepoel, you have the floor.
It's easier to do it from the chair. Thank you very much, Jeff, for the introduction, and thank you very much for the opportunity to moderate this session. By means of introduction, I just want to mention that I'm really particularly honored to moderate this plenary and look forward to an engaging and inspirational dialogue with this esteemed panel. Over the past few decades, the impressive strides that we've made in agriculture to increase yields, to produce more food and feed the global population is in stark contradiction with the fact that many people around the globe still go hungry each day, and as many as 340 million on the African continent are experiencing severe food insecurity. This CGIAR Science Week coincides with the first G20 meeting to be hosted in Africa later this year. This provides a particular unique opportunity to take advantage of the CGIAR commitment with Science We Can to provide input to the G20 agenda of transforming agri-food systems for greater climate resilience, increased productivity, as well as addressing the drivers of food insecurity at the global level. The effects of food insecurity are far-reaching. It impacts health, equality, and well-being, which is why this session today is of critical importance. As mentioned by the Master of Ceremonies, Jeff, there will be 3 consecutive discussions or panels. The first one focusing on embracing regional targets aligned with the AU CAADP and the recently adopted Kampala Declaration. This will then be followed by a second panel on the 2050 vision for Africa, where it will be a discussion between CGIAR leaders and key partners, and we will then conclude the Africa segment with transforming Africa's food systems, vision and leadership. With these few words, thank you very much. Also from my side, a hearty welcome to everybody here, and I look forward to engaging with the panel in focusing on that first component. I will ask with the first question in this specific session to the Director General of Africa Rice next to me. Or shall I start with with the Director General or the CEO of CAALRU? CEO, how is CAALRU aligning Kenya's agricultural agenda with CAADP and with the recently adopted Kampala Declaration?
Thank you very much for your question. As the National Agricultural Research Organization that supports farmers in this part of the world, we are aligned by developing technologies, innovations, and management practices that support our farmers to increase productivity and improve their resilience. Because of the effects of climate change, our focus in the last few years has been developing drought-tolerant crops, drought-resilient crops. Also, with the climate change, we have new emerging pests and diseases. So a lot of the work that has been done previously has been overridden because areas that were dry are drier, areas that were of high potential are flooded. So we have had to grapple with that to support our farmers. The other challenge which our farmers face is getting the technologies. The technologies that have been developed are very many, but they are with the scientists, they are in the institutions, they are not with the farmers. So how do we get these technologies to the farmers so that we can increase productivity? So we've digitized most of our technologies. They can be availed on a mobile platform. This is to support the e-extension because that's the weakest link we have between research and the farmer, because the researchers are not able to go around to all the farmers. So we've developed digital tools to ensure that these technologies can be able to reach the farmers. I don't think I'll be able to go into details of the particular technologies because there are so many. We cover the whole range, but to be able to transform our agricultural sector, we need to ensure that the technologies get to the farmers. The easiest way to get those technologies to the farmers is by using technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. To the Director General of Africa Rice, how is Africa Rice leveraging scientific advancement and innovation to enhance rice production on the continent?
Thank you very much for the excellent question. I would first like, before responding to that question, to really thank our host, my very good friend, the DG for Calro, who was our board member for Africa Rice till quite recently. To respond to the question, the Africa Rice Center actually, when we talk about leveraging technologies, we first have to bear in mind about what technologies actually we need to be able to have a full rice value chain transformation in Africa. In Africa, presently, we are importing more than 40% of our rice consumption, totaling about more than 10 million tons every year. But actually, we find out that the capacity to produce many countries, that's what we say, there has actually been a green revolution in Africa, but it was silent for most of the continent. But there have been quite a lot of very good successes. So the Africa Rice Center, the model that we are using is quite unique within the CGIAR, because the various packages of technologies that we have, beginning from the climate smart technologies such as the drought, salinity, and also the flow-tolerant varieties. But also we have packages that we mentioned that contribute towards the health improvement and also the nutrient-dense rice. When you talk about those are the rice varieties, for example, that are very high in zinc content. We have been able to work with our partners in Madagascar, for example, and also in Mali to release high zinc rice varieties. Also, presently, we are working with partners also. There's increasing interest in colored rice, black rice, red rice. Madagascar, we were able to release with the national partners. There are also 4 red rice varieties that actually are also combining other characteristics. Farmers are really going for them. But then the model that we are using really to be able to leverage this innovation to have very high impact on the rice value chain is really to exploit the unique structure of Africa Rice. Because for Africa Rice, within the CGIAR system, we have this duality of our governance system, whereby at our highest level, the governance is led by what we call the Council of Ministers. So our Council of Ministers is actually comprised of all the 28 member countries, ministers of agriculture, or the ministers of higher education and scientific research, who every 2 years, they come together to really evaluate what Africa Rice is doing, how these activities can be better tailored and respond to their national priorities to be able to attain rice self-sufficiency. So during those discussions, the ministers really work with the Africa Rice Center to be able to identify the resolutions that the center really needs to make sure that we respond to them to help the countries to attain food security, but also food and nutrition security through enhanced rice value chains. So the policy enhancement and also the capacitation of the national programs is a high priority for Africa Rice. Then the second one is the partnership network. Africa Rice, our modus operandi actually is the partnership network, whereby we have a network of national partners who do the technology testing for us across more than 30 African countries, be they varieties, be they good agricultural practices or mechanization practices. These are the teams that do the testing of the technologies and validate technologies. They are the ones who also lead the dissemination and scaling of the technologies in partnership with the private sector. So, Mr. Chair, this is just some of the example of the way Africa Rice is operating to be able to make sure that proven technologies, we are able to do the scaling, the validation together with our partnership network to make sure that we are able to do a meaningful upgrading of the rice value chain to contribute also to rice self-sufficiency in the continent to be able to reduce the import bill in our countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that excellent overview. Baba Femi, what is PAFU doing to make sure that you mobilize and farmer organizations are fully engaged in CAADP and the recently adopted Kampala Declaration?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to really present PAFO to those who do not know PAFO. PAFO is a continental platform for farmers in Africa, representing over 80 million farmers in 5 regional networks in 73 national farmers organizations in 49 countries in Africa. So we have the convening power and the representation for farmers in Africa. Now coming to the question, we know that the CAADP 3.0 was not the first one. We have the Maputo, we have the Malabo declarations, whereby farmers did not play a role in their crafting. But this time around, the African Union Commission involved PAFO, and what we did was that we engaged in consultations before we prepared our memorandum that we submitted to them at the local level, at the national level, at the regional level, and at the continental level, gathering together the aspirations of the farmers, the expectations of the farmer for the new CAADP document. And also we were represented in all the technical committees, bringing into those committees the views of farmers and what the farmers are expecting from the strategies and the action plans that are going to be developed in the declaration. And at the declaration were also associated. Actually, PAFO is a member of the steering committee of CAADP, whereby we also make our views to be known at the highest level of decision-making in CAADP. So this time around, we really appreciated the involvement of PAFO, and that we are not policy takers or policy consumers, but we are part of the policy developer, and that is what we want to do. And again, we are putting in place the mechanisms, not only to, declarations are always political statement. We knew what happened in Maputo declaration, 10% that should be allocated to the agricultural sector, which was not met by any of the nations. So this time around, we are putting together the mechanisms that will enable farmers to be involved in the monitoring and evaluating the implementation of CAADP 3.0, so that constantly our views as farmers are taken into consideration and integrated into the reports that are being prepared, so that there will be an inclusive involvement of all the stakeholders. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Baba Femi. The next question is going to Dr. Fall, the former Director General of Israel, and we're going to zoom in specifically on agricultural mechanization and post-harvest technology. And how do you see for that to be scaled out to improve productivity and reduce losses in West Africa particularly, but also more globally or more broadly on the continent? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator, for allowing me to take the floor. Agriculture mechanization in Africa is very, very complex. You have to keep in mind that anytime we talk about agriculture mechanization, we talk about small scale and large scale, and in between, medium scale. Every scale needs a specific type of mechanization approach. That's make it very complex. Because when you talk about small scale, Pafo just said it for the farmers' organization, 90% of farmers in Senegal, I know, I'm sure in Africa, are small scale. And when you say small scale, it's 1 to 3 hectares. 1 to 3 hectares, not very, Now mechanizing 1 to 3 hectares is completely different mechanizing 100 hectares. When we reach the commercial farm, and the producers, sometimes they get together in irrigation scheme to have something like 3,000 hectares, because they have to, to get together to do that. Yeah, you can mechanize, in terms of tractorization and stuff like that. So let's make it very complex. We did a lot of surveys to see what is the agriculture mechanization look like in Africa, especially in West Africa. So when we did that survey, it was a couple of years ago, we still know, since I've been doing agriculture mechanization since 1983, farmers are facing the same challenges. What are the challenges? Lack of spare parts. If they go in tractors, they can, go rapidly. They give them tractors because the government want, agriculture to go very fast and produce enough. So tractors will come in. After 2 years of plowing, breakdown, no spare parts. So what we do, we look for a new tractor. So where you go throughout, West Africa, you see what we call agriculture equipment graveyards. They're all over the place. Why? Because we're just lacking of spare parts. Another problem farmers are facing is not all the time available. I mean, affordable in terms of it costs very much. Tractor, everybody knows it costs a lot of money compared to animal traction equipment. But tractors are imported. It's not produced in Africa. I'll come to that point, to see how we can scale. Well, I don't want to take your time going in detail agriculture mechanization because I know very well that it's something very complex. I'm just for scaling because the question is how we can scale up whatever we're doing in agriculture mechanization at the African level, regional and African level. I just written 6 points. I'm not going to go develop those 6 points. The first one is research and development. We want the researcher, and I know IITA, Africa Rice and IRI, because we're working a lot with IRI, they know about what I'm talking about. We have to have those technology we are creating to be adapted to the environment. Because if you are creating technology for rain-fed rice, it's completely different from irrigated rice. So the technology you're producing before you upscale it, be sure that technology is adapted to the environment, is applicable and affordable. That's one question. So researchers definitely are at the forefront before we upscale any technology. Custom service dealers, what we do for farmers to get technology too expensive for them is to, rental. We create a lot of rental enterprises. So what we need now is if you want to upscale at the continental level is digitalization. How we can put digitalization to have a database, a knowledge of all the tractors and whatever. So any farmers who say, I want to do something and I want to do it in a rice field or in the upland, he knows what type of equipment he needs to do that. They don't know. Now they just take whatever is available. So digitalization is very important to put all those information available to farmers and to policymakers also. Third, dissemination of agriculture mechanization, equipment, and post-harvest solution. We need to strengthen agriculture advisory and extension. They are not very much involved in agriculture mechanization. We have to train them. If you want advisory system and extension to be very useful in the process, people working in those services need to be trained. And when we talk about training, it's technical training. It's not just training, because that extension service and that advice should tell the producer which tractor to choose among 10 tractors. What type of equipment, a plow, a moldable plow, a chisel plow, a cover crop, what to use with that tractor, where they want to. So the advice, if the advice system doesn't know all those things, we are just messing up our land and losing our soils. Third, and now four, that's a national strategy of agriculture for agriculture mechanization. Throughout Africa now, especially in West Africa, we are working more and more having a national strategy for agriculture mechanization policy. Farmers, researchers, they can't do it alone. If you want to reduce losses on past harvest, you have to, the states have to be involved. For example, if you want tractors to be used for farmers to use it everywhere, we need good roads. But farmers cannot build the roads. We need infrastructures, Second, if you want to reduce losses, we need something like storage units. If you don't have storage units to cut down the losses, there's no way you're going to reduce the losses. So states have to put, to work in this strategy. So we need that national policy. And networking and collaboration, that's very, very important. I guess the game changer in this for the future is to put the professional organization and association. We used to be here sitting CG, Cora, Farah, ISRA, but you don't see any professional organization. For example, the Pan-African Society of Agriculture Engineering had never part of our meetings. Those guys are the professional of agriculture mechanization. Now, if we want to upscale and be sure that we have enough resources, trained enough experts to be in the game, we need to put the professional in the system. So I guess CAADP, I will use my labo, we're going to take the time to put the Pan-African Society of Agriculture, Agriculture Engineering, also ACT, which is here in ACT, is in Nairobi, the African Conservation Tillage. You know them network. Yeah, definitely, but you've never seen them in our meetings. And those guys are really professional in those kind of questions. If mechanization have to play its role. I can go on, with the West African Agriculture Mechanization Network. They are not part of the game, but they should. And for me to thank really IITA and Africa Rice to play that role. Everybody knows that with Africa Rice and ISRA and the NAS, we produce a treasure we call ASI. I don't know, they do all West Africa, I'm not sure about. ASI means Africa Rice, SAID, which is an extension service, is ISRA, we call it ASI. And that treasure just been scaled all over West Africa because it's working. It has been produced by local engineers, and the networking allow you to do. The last one, which is the 6, is to be part of the industrialization process. We cannot say all the time importing tractors from overseas, all the time. They break down, nowhere to replace, to fix it. So we should put in the industrialization. We have to have plant in Africa to build tractors and farm equipment. I don't know, maybe in South Africa they do. I don't know any African countries really where we have an African brand of tractors for our farmers. I have never seen it. Since 1983, I'm in agriculture mechanization. I've never seen it in West, either in Central, maybe in South Africa. I don't know very well in South Africa, but we should put that with the private sector, the partnership with the private sector to get involved in maintaining and putting in place an industry for manufacturing tractors, post-harvest equipment, you name it, for the farmers in the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. One can hear that's from a very wise man with many years of experience. Thank you very much. The next question goes to my colleague, Professor Cliff Dlamini. The two of us are from Southern Africa and have spent time together at Stellenbosch University. If I say Southern Africa and CGIAR, I work at the university. I think it's important that we talk about knowledge sharing and capacity development and capacity strengthening. And what is the role of CGIAR in this specific context of knowledge sharing, capacity development in Southern Africa? Professor Dlamini.
Thank you, program moderator. I hope I'm audible. I'll try to be concise. So let me introduce CAADP as the Center for the Coordination of Agriculture Research and Development in Southern Africa. Although we're autonomous, but specifically we're a technical wing of SADC. We're responsible for coordinating agriculture research and development. So what is more relevant to the topic of the day for CAADP is CAADP has 6 thematic areas, one of which is more relevant to the current process, especially the first phase and the second phase of the Malabo. That is agriculture production and productivity and food and nutrition security. The others are also relevant because capacity building is there, knowledge management is there, transboundary present diseases. So what CAADP does is to operate within the subsidiarity approach. So we don't go to the ground, but our entry point to our 16 SADC member states are mainly the ministries of agriculture and food security. So what we have done over the few years, the long-term strategic plan of CAADP and the associated mid-term operational plan have been reviewed and aligned to the post-Malabo and the agri-food systems approach. So when you look at our strategy, we're aligned. We also do our work through flagship programs, some funded by the World Bank, some funded by the EU. So under the CAADP program, we are part of the CAADP XP4 consortium, and CAADP has actually contributed massively to training our member states in understanding the transition from the Malabo to the post-Malabo. During the consultative process, when the targets were developed, CAADP supported member states to be part of the process. We assume that our member states understand post-Malabo very well now. Then under they say we have got CAADP focal points in all member states, and they are ambassadors. We work with them on a full-time basis. We communicate with them, we train them, and then they implement at national level. We also have a program called the APSA. The APSA program is about production and productivity, and it has been implemented in 5 countries, and there it's all about improving agriculture production and productivity in our region. We also have a program called the Food Systems Resilience Program, funded by the World Bank. Through that program, we supported the process of the regional agriculture investment plans, which is being implemented by the SADC Secretariat. We have another program called the AgriLAC. In that program, which is funded by the World Bank as well, we work with the CG. And it's a project that has shown that working with the CG can actually even enhance the image and the impact of CAADP in our region. We're grateful for that one. The CAADP is our CAADP project is funded by the EU. So we also have the Heading for Health program. So through our programs, we implement our 6 thematic areas in the region. We also have a very strong information communication knowledge management system. We have focal points for ICKM, and we have assisted members to develop their ICKM strategies in the region. So we have a presence in information communication knowledge management, and we're actually lobbying countries to consider data collection and analysis to assess the implementation of the Malabo. I think I would end there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Our last speaker in this panel is Julian. She's from AgriLAC, and we want you to outline to us what is the biggest challenges in adopting policy recommendations across the continent. Obviously, very important, critically important is the role of women in agricultural research and development. I think over and above that, if we just look at the panel here, this should definitely be one of the policy recommendations that you would certainly talk to, but more broadly also in terms of the others. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you, moderator. The organization that I work for, AgriLAC, is a sub-regional intergovernmental organization of 15 member countries in Eastern and Central Africa. So a few months ago, AgriLAC was contacted by one of our member countries to support them to review one of their critical agricultural policies. And this was a 10-year policy that had been implemented for 8 years at the time. And there was an interesting finding as we jointly reviewed this policy. And guess what? We realized that the policy problem was wrong. It had been wrongly diagnosed And this is 8 years down the road of implementation. So this is a typical example of what can go wrong and why policy recommendations would not be implemented. As we see in this example, there is poor policy design. The moment the policy problem is wrong, it means that the related policy recommendations cannot address the actual problems on the ground. And the implementers are rational beings. They detect this and they will not implement. There will be minimal effort towards implementation. The other issue that we see in this example is really a poor perception where some of the policymakers consider policies as an end in themselves. So the moment the policy is formulated and passed, the box is ticked and people sit back and run on to the next policy to formulate. So this means that there is nobody who is following up, monitoring the implementation of the policy. Even the policy units in these ministries, for instance, the ministries that have formulated these policies, do not have budgetary allocations to review these policies, and they've not planned. So even when there are mistakes in formulation, you realize them at the end of the time frame for the policy. The other issue as to why policy recommendations would not be implemented is ambiguity. If the policy recommendations are ambiguous, nobody understands them, and as such, they will not be implemented effectively just because they are ambiguous. The other challenge is lack of a supporting regulatory framework. There are policies that cannot be implemented effectively if they do not have regulatory frameworks. That means there is no accountability. Nobody, there's non-uniform application of that policy, but also voluntary compliance to the policy because there are no regulations that are going to make this policy bite. The other challenge that I see in Africa is also frequent policy changes. And this could be as a result of changing policy priorities. They could be as a result of political instability. So you find that a policy is formulated, and before its time frame expires, a related policy is introduced. So what happens? People are going to abandon the previous policy and run on to the new policy. And as such, the policy recommendations in the previous policy will be abandoned and they will not be implemented. And the other important issue is lack of political will. And this was ably discussed by the Council of the Wise on day one of this CG Science Week. Esteemed delegates, the moment these policy recommendations are not translated into actions in the regional agriculture investment plans, the national agriculture investment plans, the annual work plans of these implementing agencies, their government programs and projects, the moment they are not translated into actions in there and budgets allocated, you can as well forget about their implementation. It will not happen. There is also an issue of poor coordination. Once there is, the implementing agencies are poorly coordinated and nobody speaks to each other, there is duplication of efforts. It means that some of the key policy recommendations will not be implemented because there are so many implementing actors and they're doing the same thing. So some of the recommendations will be ignored. And finally, the issue that I would like to also talk about is lack of awareness on existing policies. There are so many policies, and quite often citizens and other actors, important stakeholders, like all of you gathered here in this room, are not aware of all the important policies that have been formulated. We do not know the policy recommendations they are in, and later on even know about our civic duty to implement these policies. So as such, some of the recommendations will not be implemented because people are just not aware about the policies, what is in there, and their civic duty to implement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For this overview of all the challenges and very clear articulation of where we can try and make interventions. I think in the interest of time, we will need to stop here because we have less than 5 minutes left. I think we've covered everything very clearly and comprehensively in aligning with CAADP and the declaration, the NARIs, the sub-regional organizations, also the CGIAR research centers. And with that, I would like to thank the panel most sincerely and close the session before we move to the dialogue between the CGIAR center leaders and other partners. Thank you.
Excellent. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, panelists. You can find your way back to your seats. Thank you very much. Thank you. Another round of applause for our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Still on the topic of Africa, folks, I'd like to invite the following, and Dr. Franz Swanepoel will remain as moderator. I'd like to invite Dr. Ali Abusabar, Director General, International Center for Agricultural Research and the Dry Areas, or ICARDA. I'd like to invite Dr. Elian, welcome, Dr. Elian Ubalijoro, CEO, Director General, C4/ICRAF. Dr. Najat Mokhtar, Deputy Director General, International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. Dr. Martin Frejen, Director of Agriculture and Agro-Industry, African Development Bank, AFDB. Dr. Simeon Ehui, Director General, International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. Dr. Swanepoel, take it away.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. Thank you very much and welcome to the panel. I think I will start with Simeon on the other side, where we started with the others on this side. Simeon, if I can ask you, how is ITA building sustainable value chains and priority farmer inclusion and environmental stewardship? Thank you, Simeon.
You hear me? Good morning, everyone. Habari zenu. Karibuni. These are 2 words I learned while being here, and I hope to learn more. Thank you very much, Franz, for this question. I want to say that IITA value chain approach goes beyond production, okay? What we do is that we connect, basically, farmers with markets. We help improve incomes. We also help to enhance resilience and also protect the ecosystem. What we do is really to push, basically, what we call the boundaries by combining technologies together with the youth empowerment, local knowledge, and partnership to foster inclusive and scalable and sustainable innovation. So, to give you some examples, I think it's worth it. IITA uses digital agriculture to help farmers to optimize input and improve profitability. One successful example of what IITA did is the mobile platforms and AI-driven tools like such as Aquilimo, which provides personalized recommendation on fertilizers and crop spacing and planting calendars. It is an agronomic advisory service that's been developed with and for farmers. This technology has been validated by over 5,000 smallholder growers and are used by over 200 partner organizations. I'm very much proud of that because a country, for example, such as Ethiopia, where agricultural growth is about 6% per annum, they are using this particular tool. And I remember the former Prime Minister, citing it at one of the AFS meeting, and it made us quite proud. Another area where IITA is really engaging significantly is the empowerment of youth in agribusiness training and incubation, access to finance, and also through projects like iYouth. And it's something that we are also proud of. We got some development partners working with us in this particular area. IIT also uses specific advanced technologies for breeding techniques like genomic selection, marker-assisted breeding, and speed breeding to accelerate development of improved seed. First, I also want to mention one thing that IITA, together with partners, are doing in the area of seed systems. And yesterday it was being defined. Seed system is not just about breeding the seed. It's about breeding the seed. It's about taking care of the agronomy. It's about also taking care of the plant health. And we have developed an economically sustainable seed system for root and tuber crops. And one of them that I'm particularly proud of as a DG is one thing that we developed called the semi-autotropic hydroponic. And I know EMD, when I told her yesterday or that it's one of the technologies that actually it is 10,000 times, okay? And I repeat, 10,000 times more rapid than classical method in terms of multiplication. This is the kind of thing that we need, for farmers. Yeah, I mean, seriously, I think we deserve another round of applause. No, I'm very proud of that because the private sector is picking this one up, multiplying it, and then making clean cassava, plantlets available for farmers. If I tell you that in a circumstance where you'll have, let's say, 10 truckloads of cassava cuttings to be able to plant 1 hectare, here you just put them in the back of a pickup, and then you get the same result. This is the kind of transformation that we are providing, and I think I'm very proud of that. I want to mention also in the area of another commodity where we make is in maize, where we have developed and deployed stress resilience varieties that combine drought and striga resistant with improved nutrition profile. So we don't do that. We don't do the breeding just for the crop yield, but we do it for resilience, for disease control, but also for nutrition. And farmers and consumers don't know, what they are consuming, but they are getting the vitamin A, the iron, everything in their body, and then they are resilient. So France, we have many more things to say. Let me stop here for the time being, and I can come back with more examples to tell you about how we develop value chains and help producers and consumers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon. Dr. Mokhtar, yeah, in terms of the role of the International Atomic Energy Agency, specifically leveraging nuclear science and technology to enhance agricultural resilience and food security, specifically in the face of the climate crisis. Could you elaborate on that for us a little bit, please? Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and very good morning to all of you. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Ismahan, for the invitation and to be in this beautiful campus. If you allow me, I have a question to the audience. How many of you know IAEA? Wonderful. Not too many, but not bad. How many you know that IAEA is supporting food and agriculture science? There we go, super. So yes, so we have, because the problem is when you hear the word nuclear, immediately you run away. because of this preconception of the danger of nuclear. But you know, the danger is everywhere. You need to understand the danger to harness it and adopt it. And nuclear technology is just a science, like any technology. You need to understand it, harness it, and use it. And let me tell you, in food and agriculture, nuclear science and technology can really provide added value to conventional methods. And I can give you examples throughout the value chain in food and agriculture. And in soil and water, for example, particularly now we're talking about drought and salinity, the stable isotope techniques, not radioactive, can be used to use water and fertilizers more efficiently. And this is, again, very important when you talk about climate, when you talk about economies. And this has been used in many countries, Sudan, Mauritania, here in Kenya, Zimbabwe, and other countries, where we really advise farmers on how we can use fertilizers more efficiently. And this through apps that can be used, digitalization, to do this. And I can give more examples if you want, we can discuss after the session. But here you will tell me, but this is just science and research and is in the labs, which is not true. You need the lab to prove science, but then you roll it out to the land for proof of concept. And we have been doing this for decades. And then moving to the plant breeding, again, plant breeding, you need, when you use radiation, you speed up mutation. So you produce varieties that you can produce with conventional mutation. And here again, we need that for food security. We need that to preserve biodiversity. And this is what we are doing again with many centers here and with many countries. Banana, for example, resistant to disease, coffee, wheat, we heard about rice in the other panel. Similarly, we need this technology to breed new varieties that they can stand the harsh environment and can stand the disease. And moving now to the harvest and to how we can preserve the harvest. And here again, using what we call sterile insect, which is just birth control of insects. So you can take control of the pest, like how we call it, the fruit fly, for example, which is devastating many of our harvest, and has been used largely in Latin America. Now we are trying to do it in Africa. We have center in Burkina Faso, another center in Morocco, and we hope to have many centers on sterile insects. It's environment friendly. You don't use pesticide and insecticide. So talking about climate change. And now moving again, once you have that harvest, what to do with? Because you know that more than 40% of the harvest is lost, is waste. And this is a major issue in food security. And again, using ionization, you can preserve that food for more than 1 year. Depends on the type of food, of course, but it's already a validated technology used in many countries in Asia and Latin America that you can preserve the food, and it's safe, and you can, and it has economic value because you can export it. So here again, there are opportunities that we can work together in food and agriculture to move the agenda, be in climate change or be in food security or be in empowering women and youth. This could be done, but we need, of course, this mass force. We need this opportunity to partner with all of you. So the agency, we have labs, we have 12 labs. Please come and visit our labs, and would be very happy to partner with everybody. I forgot the animal side because also because I have my colleague, the head of the animal lab program, she will tell me you didn't talk about animal health. So I have to say that we have a big program in animal production and health, where again, we're using radiation to map, gene mapping for cattle. Very important to be able to give to the farmers, saving time and money to breed for new varieties of cattle, very important. And nutrition, of course, we have program in nutrition. where we look once you have the harvest on protein, for example, a protein content in food, how much of that protein is being used by the body? Only nuclear technology can tell you that. You want me to go on? Now, I stop.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Ali Icarda. How is Icarda adapting its research agenda to ensure and advance resilience in African drylands, African dryland agriculture?
I think that's a very relevant and very important question. Icarda, as many of you know, works on the non-tropical drylands. And this is part of the world where the water scarcity is at its highest level. Most of the countries where we operate have less than 100 millimeters of rain. And at the very best, you could go as high as maybe 300, 350. So in addition to all the problems that you see across the food systems and agricultural production in general, you have the added complexity of the water scarcity. The second point is the region where we operate is actually warming up at twice the average of other parts of the globe, which means we have a bigger problem to resolve and the need to come up with very creative solutions to deal with this multiple levels of complexity. Now, the way we look at the food systems, we look at it at multiple levels. It's not just production, it's not only processing, it's not only on consumption. It's a whole range of interventions that are needed, including on the policy front. If I take some examples of the technologies we've been working on, I take the example of Morocco. Morocco had seen the drought of the century, as they call it, for the last 3 or 4 years. And, we've been working very closely with the national partners to come up with solutions and deploy them into farmer fields. Some of the examples are new durum wheat varieties that actually give you almost the same kind of yield at half the levels of rainfall. So 200 millimeters, 150, you can get a very good crop as opposed to 350 or 400 millimeters. And that's the kind of thing, and I think we're privileged to be able to dig deeply into the gene banks to be able to identify those kind of genotypes that can hopefully bring some relief. Barley is another example. We're also working with a very short maturing barley varieties, 3 months as compared to 6 months. We're trying to deploy this in the Gulf, where the window of opportunity is very small, and it has very similar applications in many parts of Africa. I know my friend Martin will speak about the wheat for Africa. African Development Bank has been very generous supporting CGIAR more broadly, but in the case of Icarda, I think we've been able to do excellent work in Ethiopia in particular, growing up more than 500,000 hectares of wheat with technologies coming from both Icarda and CIMIT, but with a very dedicated and policy commitment from the government of Ethiopia to be able to do that. And we're taking this to 12 other countries in Africa. I don't want to go into a lot of detail. But I want to add one very important element. It is all known that the yield of varieties that are developed within research centers are much higher than what you see in farmer fields. So some of the success stories I have seen in Egypt, where they have taken the best varieties that is suitable to 20 different governorates. They have multiplied them at scale, and now farmers almost at 90-95% across the country uses the best available varieties. So that is a major step change in the increased production simply by policy interventions and making the right investments on the ground to drive that. And my last point is, again, Icarda, we work on the water, mostly on the on-farm. IMI works at the global level. We work on the crops and the livestock. So looking at the system is so critical, because the kind of challenges that we are living through, it is not enough to think conventional and act conventional. You need to look at the system level and how you can maximize the opportunities out of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and especially for emphasizing the systems approach. Thank you very much. Dr. Ubali Yoro, the CEO of World Forestry. How is World Forestry adapting its research to strengthen Africa's agroforestry systems?
Thank you. I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be here today with all of you. And I particularly want to thank my CG Africa directors, Ali, Boubacar, Apollinaire, and Simeon for the wonderful work and relationships that we've been building. So in terms of C4ICRAF, we have offices in 14 African countries, and we have additional projects across the continent. We contextualize our strategy to country-specific situations through partnerships, capacity building, tree-based options to provide locally adapted and led solutions. We support a number of African countries in developing their own agroforestry strategies, including Rwanda, Uganda, Ethiopia, and Kenya. This is critical considering that agroforestry is not housed in any specific ministry in many countries and is often mainly split between agriculture and forestry. So this could be departments of environment and departments of forestry or departments of agriculture. So it makes that the science and the tools around agroforestry are highly needed and require coordination across different ministries. Using our mantra of the right tree for the right purpose in the right place, our wealth of experience on quality seed and seedling systems, soil health and geospatial and carbon credits, value chains, governance, coupled with participatory approaches, really provides tools and resources such as the land degradation surveillance framework, where we really harness artificial intelligence and citizen science to give farmers as much data as possible. For example, for our Regreening Africa program, phase 1 was recognized last year at UNEA as a flagship program for the UN Decade for Restoration. And we launched in Riyadh at the Land COP, the phase 2, which is now across the Sahel region for the next 5 years in partnership with the European Commission. So we really see the work we do in agroforestry as really key in terms of how we work with local communities, with governments, but we also work on the capacity building side with universities. We have supported the review and development where none previously existed of agroforestry curriculum across 4 Eastern African universities under the Australian Centre for International Agriculture Research funding, with engagement with Mekele and Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia, with Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, and the University of Nairobi in Kenya, the University of Rwanda, as well as Makerere in Uganda. So for us, it's really a journey of how do we look at the power of agroforestry contributing to food security, to biodiversity conservation, and climate resilience at the same time. And we're excited about our continued partnership across the continent with our other CGIAR centers and with governments and all stakeholders present here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Our last speaker in this panel is Martin from the African Development Bank. In this context, it would be interesting to get a perspective from you of how the African Development Bank is shaping or adjusting its investment strategies to build climate resilient food systems across the continent. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much. And habari wasubuhi. Yeah, so I want to thank Ismahani and the CGIAR for inviting us here. The topic of this session, targeting transformation, is so important. When you consider that on an average, the yields of Africa's most important staple crops are 1/3 of global averages. And for me, transformation, when you talk of transformation, is just simply doubling productivity. And transformation has always been the driver of improved rural livelihoods. Look at any other continent, Mexico, India. Once productivity doubles, everything begins to change. For us at the bank, we believe that productivity can only be doubled by science. That is sound science. So it was not any surprise when we invited the CGIAR to partner with us in 2015 when we were designing the Feed Africa. The second corporate priority of the bank, Feed Africa, we invited the CGIAR to Dakar then. And since then, a lot has happened. I will just go very quickly over a few of them. And I really want to commend the CGIAR for stepping out of its comfort zone of just research to actual development. The very first flagship of Feed Africa that we launched was called Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation. It sought to do 5 things. Number 1, to demonstrate a package of technologies to smallholder farmers. Number 2, to build seed systems so that farmers will have enough seeds of the improved varieties. Number 3, to build extension workers to kind of revamp the extension systems, especially both the public and the private. Number 4, it also sought to put in policies, especially regulatory policies around the seeds and then fertilizer and things like that. And also, it's also sought to introduce climate smart technologies. After about 5 years, and then the DG of ICARD has mentioned it, but there were 11 centers that we work with on that chart. We were proud to announce that we have been able to demonstrate that 150,000 tons of heat-tolerant wheat variety seeds have been produced and planted on about 1.5 million hectares in Ethiopia, in Sudan, in Nigeria, and in Tanzania. Things that have been documented, and this is because of the CGIAR. Now farmers, instead of harvesting 1 ton, they're harvesting 3 tons. Similarly also for rice, and the DG of Africa Rice this year, 95,000 tons of improved rice varieties were also produced and distributed and planted on almost 2 million hectares across West Africa. Same also for maize. There was a total of 45,000 tons of drought-tolerant maize planted on about 2.2 million hectares of land. All this has actually, we reach more than 25 million farmers with all these different seeds. All this has actually increased food production across the continent on an annual basis by an additional 25 million tons of more food. To me, this is a demonstration that smallholder farmers working with research people with some funding can actually feed themselves and feed their farmers. TAT received a big, significant boost when there was the Ukraine-Russia war. And during that war, Africa was going to lose like 30 million tons of supply of mostly wheat and maize from the Black Sea region. The bank invested $1.5 billion in 26 countries to actually reach 20 million farmers with 450,000 tons of certified seed. Again, these were all produced working very closely with CGIAR and their partners in country. 2.8 million tons of fertilizer that produce an additional 37 million tons of food, again documented, demonstrating that if you work with the right partners, with CGIAR, with the private sector, with the farmers themselves, you can actually begin to raise productivity and feed Africa. But in 2023, we decided to have a stock-taking meeting in Dakar. We called together heads of state. There were 34 heads of state there, 75 ministers. And we said, okay, where have we, how far have we gone and what is left? And then many people pledged, many partners pledged. There was a total pledge of about $72 billion to support Africa reaching self-sufficiency. Because when there is COVID or when there is a war, you may have money to buy food, but you cannot buy the food simply because there are no ships coming or there's just no food coming. So we said that we needed to do something about that. To date, the bank has actually invested about $3 billion, and we have another pipeline for this year, $1.5 billion, to additional investment in supporting TAT and in supporting the countries to ensure that Africa can begin to approach that transformation of doubling productivity on the continent. But a very big gap has been the ag SMEs, the smallholder farmers, the agro dealers, the microfinance banks. They struggle to get enough finance. So only last month here in Nairobi, we launched what we call the Ag SME Financing Facility to leverage another $10 billion from the bank's balance sheets to de-risk lending for these Ag SMEs. Yeah, and just lastly, to address climate change, we do recognize that the climate is changing, and the biggest and the most vulnerable casualties actually are smallholder farmers. So we actually launched 3 regional programs, one in the Horn of Africa, one in the Sahel, and one in Southern Africa, to actually reach farmers, also millions of farmers, with, first of all, drought-tolerant materials, then crop insurance, extremely important, and then thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, advisory services. I think I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martin. In this context, having listened to our 5 panelists, I'm convinced that we have received very inspirational messages and evidence towards a vision for Africa Food 2050. Unfortunately, we're limited for time, so to conclude this, I'm going to ask each one of you to just make a short comment, final comment of 1 minute in terms of further enhancing your inspirational message towards the vision for Africa 2050 food. Thank you, Dr. Ali.
Yeah, my response is simple. I think the kind of challenges we're seeing today is beyond the capacity of any single CGIAR center to respond. So that's why the one CGIAR that brings us all together to focus on the very best interests of every country we serve is the way to go for the future. And I think this gives the very best innovations into the farmer hands with the very strong political commitment from our leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Mokka.
Yeah, just to build on that, we go maybe beyond CGIAR, but partnership, because we cannot work in isolation, partnership in all this. We cannot work on soil or plant breeding separately. We have to work together. And also capacity building, we need to build workforce, not only on traditional method, but on innovation, science and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elaine?
So building on my two colleagues, I would say we need to identify how these innovation ecosystems help us de-risk and unlock more financing so that we are able to feed Africa. Martin talked about the critical issues that the African Development Bank has put forward around, financing food locally and high quality food. So it's really critical that our science helps unlock more financing. And as we integrate the different types of agricultural systems that are so critical to be working together, and this is where we see trees critical in terms of, in a changing climate, trees can decrease temperatures by 10 degrees. We know we can lose the cocoa production belt because of that. And so how we're looking at integration of trees on farm are really critical to ensure that instead of decreased production of 30% for wheat for the last 50 years, we can really ensure that agroforestry helps us make our agricultural systems as resilient as possible.
Thank you so much, Martin.
I would just like to dwell a little bit on what Eliane said, how science can actually help us unlock financing. The financing or the development aid, scenario has changed drastically in the last 3 months. We should not be thinking of aid now, we should be thinking of investments. But the only way to unlock investments is to reduce risk. And the only way to reduce risk is to increase productivity, and then that requires science. So science has become the most important key now to unlock financing for agriculture. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Simeon?
Hello? No. Franz, I want to, do you hear me? Okay. Look, there are three things three messages that I want to leave with you. The same message, I delivered it 4 weeks ago to the entire cabinet of ministers in Côte d'Ivoire. They asked me a question, how to improve agri-productivity and value addition. After developing this, the theory, I told them three things that they should remember. Science is one, invest in science. Second, investment in rural infrastructure. Third, and I want to insist on that, is partnership. Multi-stakeholder partnership, working with the CGIAR, national program, private sector, NGOs, to co-create solutions is what we need to be able to address the complex challenges. And Martin mentioned the TAT, which is actually a very good example of multi-stakeholder partnership to deliver a result at scale. Because thanks to TAT, for example, in which I play a leading role, coordinating role, we were able to deliver Climate Smart seeds to 12 million farmers in 27 countries in 3 years. What more do we need? We need more of this kind of situation. And the current context of funding, dear friends, you know what's happening in the world today. You know that USAID has been dismantled. You know that it is creating problem for, some people are losing even jobs. Some programs are being stopped. African institutions can get together with African resources in country to do the transformation. That's what we need to do, work together in partnership, and we can. That is the message that I want to leave with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Dr. Swanepoel. You've done a great job. And thank you, panelists. Another round of applause for our panelists, please. Thank you. Well done. And for Dr. Swanepoel, you've been here all morning doing a great job. Keep it up. One more session for the Africa, one more to go. And for this session, I'd like to call upon the following. Dr. Nancy Rapondo, she's Africa Food Future Leader, WWF. Dr. Purnima Menon, Senior Director, Food and Nutrition Policy, International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI. Dr. Ruben Echeverria, Senior Advisor, Agricultural Development at the Gates Foundation. Dr. Daniel Mwenda Mailuta, CEO, Kenyan National Farmers Federation, KENHAF. Professor Apollinaire Jikeng, he's the Director General, International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI. And Mr. Ugfali Baji, Lead Global Food Security Specialist in Agriculture, Water Resource and Rural Development at the Islamic Development Bank. Dr. Swanepoel, over to you.
Thank you very much, MC. Thank you and welcome to the panelists. I will start with the first question to Nancy, focusing on the work that the World Wildlife Foundation is doing and supporting, especially in the context of agroforestry.
This one.
And how can agricultural transformation enhance resilience without compromising the environment and biodiversity? Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, thank you so much, moderator. Allow me to introduce first the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, WWF. We are a conservation organization, but you might be wondering, why are we talking about food? It is because where wildlife thrives, people also live there. And we are working with communities that need food, but we also need to ensure that our food production systems are also creating enough spaces for conservation. So let me just talk about a recent report by WWF that is called the Living Planet Report that we always author after every 2 years. Our 2024 report is actually looking at how our wildlife species are declining. And we've noted that since 1970 to 2022, we've had a 74% decline in wildlife globally. And for Africa, this is actually 76%. But this is wildlife when we're talking about, some are even in protected areas. But what of agriculture ecosystems and agricultural biodiversity that is always threatened a lot by our farming practices? That actually implies that the decline is even more. But actually, the biggest driver of biodiversity loss is still our agri-food systems. We're seeing that the main drivers are actually habitat degradation out of our farming systems. We are looking at a lot of pollution, and there is also overexploitation. We are overharvesting the ecosystems. And just looking at the story of conversion, there was a recent report, I think I read someone who showed it on LinkedIn, that a report in Tanzania is showing that a lot of habitats are getting converted because of agriculture, but this is not translating into any yield increases. The reason for this is actually that we are actually moving into very marginal areas that do not even have enough nutrients. They don't even have enough biodiversity to support production. As WWF, we've done a lot of analysis, especially within the southern Kenya, northern Tanzania landscape that actually cascades all the way from the Mara, Serengeti up to Tsavo towards the coastal side of Kenya and Tanzania. And what we have actually seen that from 2018 to 2023 alone, we've seen 3.23% conversion of that landscape from a grassland-based landscape to other uses. But the biggest reason for conversion is actually crop production. We are seeing a lot of crop production getting into the rangelands, and actually crop production has claimed over 298,000 hectares in this ecosystem. So it actually shows that there's a lot of expansion of agriculture into non-agricultural areas. This is land that is meant for pastures, and this is also land that is meant for wildlife. So now you start seeing why as an organization we are within these areas. But what can we do? What can be done when this is all happening? So as WWF, after every 5 years, we author what we call the Africa Ecological Food Futures Report, and together with partners like the CG and the Africa Development Bank. And when we did this the last 2 years, a report that we launched during the Dubai COP, we came up with 3 decision areas. What can be done by African governments as this is happening? One is we need to plan where to grow. Most of the time, agriculture stakeholders tend to avoid the planning spaces, leaving this for the urban planners, leaving this for the other land analysis sectors. But we tend to shy away from these areas. But the reality is that the agriculture spaces are being taken up by other things like settlement. And so when this is happening, agriculture has to push into the conservation areas. But the conservation people, we're also pushing, we need to protect these areas. So agriculture will actually be pushed into areas that are marginal, and that is why being part of this planning is very critical. And the work of our scientists in the CG is that we need more information on how to plan these areas and in terms of land suitability. But the next way is we need to change the way we are producing food. As WWF, we're talking about nature positive production that is based on agroecological principles. We believe that as we try to intensify our farming systems, we can actually do this in tandem with nature. The third is actually about influencing our food demand and consumption, but most important is working on food loss and waste. In Africa, we talk of losing around 30 to 40% of our product or of our produce, but we can actually limit these losses and ensure that we don't overexpand so that we take care of the losses that we're talking about. And there's need to invest in infrastructure, and there is also need to invest in shorter value chains that ensure that we are not losing a lot of food along the way. So thank you so much. Let me stop there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. I think you've clearly identified the nature-based solutions that can really contribute towards enhancing resilience. Thank you. Dr. Menon from IFPRI, we speak about with science we can. Obviously, that immediately speaks to evidence-based policy information. How do you see that CGIAR or IFPRI more specifically is using evidence-based policy advice to drive improvements in food and nutrition security in Africa?
Thank you so much for that question. And thank you so much to everyone for having us here. I think it's been really quite fascinating to really absorb through the last days that we've been here, the recognition of the importance of policy and of the importance of evidence-based decisions that can support different things in the policy continuum. Now, I've spent a lot of time in my own life living, working, and doing research in a very active policy context in South Asia. And the first thing I'll say is that policies for this region should be driven by the decision makers of this region and from this region. And our job in this is to provide to you the evidence that we hope can support those decisions. So I think we see our role here very much as supporting the decision makers from here. But I want to break this down just a little bit and say, what exactly do we mean by policy? When I think of policy, I think of a wide range of decisions that are made across the continuum by a wide range of government actors, from prioritizing what problems they should focus on, from thinking about what solutions to finance and deploy, to reach what kinds of people and communities around the world, and to deliver what outcomes in what timeframes. There are a series of decisions that governments and decision makers are making. Often, some decisions are on a 5-year cycle, some are on an annual cycle, some are often on a daily basis. And what we know is that evidence can and should support many, many, many of those decisions. Now, some of those decisions are very visible. What we are seeing today, this week in the world, is the result of a very visible decision that has been made by one government. What we don't see are the impacts of the many invisible decisions that are made around the policy continuum by actors every day. And so I think what we need to think about is, when we think about evidence to support policy decisions, how do we understand that this is about the entire policy continuum, not about a single stroke of the pen, but that single stroke of the pen has tremendous power. What we need to do is to really think about what is the evidence we put in place to help policymakers understand the problems they're trying to solve, the depth of those problems, the reasons behind those problems, the root causes, and therefore the solutions that really hit those root causes. We need to help them understand how to deploy solutions. How do we identify, test, and scale solutions that really hit the root causes of the challenges we face here? Why are people hungry? We need to go after the why. Why are people's diets so unhealthy? We need to go after those whys with all the solutions that we have in our hand. And this means that we should be doing both our research and our support work very closely with policy communities. We're very proud at IFPRI to have so many of our researchers working in this continent together with the policymakers of this continent to provide that support and really doing high quality research. I will say it's really crucial that we do that research also at multiple levels, because there are decisions that are made at a subnational level, there are decisions that are made at a national level, at a regional level, and certainly at the global level. And what we're trying to do with working in a world where we want to provide evidence that helps all of those decisions at multiple levels is to stay engaged, to identify the best types of evidence that help people see the problems they're trying to solve, understand the kinds of solutions that need to be scaled, and really to try and shape the enabling environments that can bring that connection really between the evidence that we have at hand and the decisions that are being made by decision makers everywhere. Let me conclude by saying simply, one of the biggest things we've learned in engaging with the policy process is how complex it is. We fully understand that decisions should be evidence-based, but we also fully understand that policy processes are complex, that governments, global bodies, regional bodies, everyone everywhere is making decisions that are based on that combination of political intent, societal values, fiscal space in available budgets, special interests, and much more. The more we can do to put evidence as high up as possible in the set of criteria that are used to make these complex decisions, I think the better off we are to support what needs to unfold as we look forward. There are only 4 annual budget and policy cycles left between now and SDG 2030. Let's think about how we bring evidence together for every single one of those budget and policy cycles. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now that you have outlined and emphasized the science policy interface, the previous session or the previous panel concluded with multi-stakeholder, multilateral, multinational partnerships. So I think this leads us automatically into the next panelist. How can the CGIAR partnerships be leveraged to accelerate agricultural innovation?
Thank you. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. I've been trying to answer the questions since 1988. When I started my work here in Kakamega, Kenya. So it's a small question. I'm still working on the answer, but thank you for the great invite. I also want to salute a good old friend of mine called Jeff Koinange, that 20 years ago, he was a TV star in Kenya. He interviewed me, and he doesn't remember now, but he's still around. So great to see you again, Jeff. So three things that I'm thinking to answer this huge question on the partnerships. The first one is to have a clear strategy on partnerships for the CGIAR. I know that there is a lot of work in the last couple of years to have a draft and so on. And the CG is a partnership, and it started 70 years ago as a partnership. So it shouldn't be too hard to get the strategy out and implement. So to have a strategy is key. Second, to have priorities. And third, to invest in partnerships. So in just a couple of nanoseconds, let me expand a bit more on these 3 points. On the institutional refreshing and rethinking on the CGIAR on partnership, I think it's very important to read what the wisdom of the Science Council told all of us. It should be mandatory reading on weekends. The Science Council 2022 comparative advantage piece. What's the comparative advantage of the CGIAR? To me, it's science for impact. It's something in between the advanced research institutes of the North and the national systems of the South, where I'm coming from. So comparative advantage is key, because that will define if it is a demand partnership, like a national system. It will define an innovation partnership, like a Cornell or a Texas, since I'm looking at ELSA. Or it could define what is in a scaling partnership, such as AGRA, since I'm looking at the ex-president of AGRA, a good friend of mine. So defining the comparative advantage and looking at the kinds of partnerships in that strategy will be great. A second key point on that strategy is to not confuse what is a partnership strategy with a fundraising strategy. They are very different. One thing is to mobilize resources to get the CGIAR and the partnership moving forward in the portfolio, and the other one is to have partnerships. To me, they are different things. They should not be confused. And still on the strategy, I also think that I've been looking a lot at the CGIAR portfolio 2025, with a lot of partnerships here being built around that portfolio. Well, all the programs, all the accelerators, including the scaling for impact and the CAPTCHA, have all partnerships. So it will be fantastic to define a bit better how to integrate all of that in a partnership refresh. The CG is a partnership, and another great asset of the CGIAR is something called the Integrated Partnership Board. How about that? There is a board on partnership working very hard to keep integrating. So I think the best way to have great external partners is to have a much better coordinated and integrated internal partnership in the CGIAR. And I think the IPB, I mean, who am I to tell the IPB what to do? But if I may, since I have the microphone, I will say that perhaps bringing the associate members of the family, some of them were sitting here, like World Veg, ICIPE, and many others. And how about promoting more alliances inside the current centers of the CG? Perhaps that will help a lot, integrate better inside to have better partners outside. On the second point of priorities, there is a much better consolidated portfolio. I think the best way to have a great partners is to clarify what I'm here to do. And that's the portfolio of CGIAR. That's the core of what the CGIAR should be focusing on. And as you all know, there is a huge effort to consolidate and consolidate. That's very important, to keep that consolidation going and to strengthen that funding in that. And there, as I mentioned earlier in some other panel, it's very easy for us funders to tell the CGIAR, why don't you go and prioritize? But then we are the ones funding the fragmentation. We are. So the long list of thousands of projects. So I think for the funders in the audience, it would be great to also consolidate ourselves, set our own priorities, and help the major programs, not all of them perhaps, but consolidate there. A great example of that, it was mentioned here by Fatima. She said that the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and Gates Foundation has set up a great alliance to start building that. So that could be one way forward. Just to finalize on investing in partnerships. From the beginning, the CG had these partnerships, which I call the commodity network partnerships. The traditional, from the very beginning, that Africa has a great example on PABRA. More than 30 countries, more than 30 years. Why it has survived despite the donor fatigue? Such a long-term network? Because it's focused on a value chain, because it has the private sector, because it has centers behind promoting some technology, but it's not center-driven. It's driven by the partnership. FLAR in Latin America is another example on rice. So I end by saying that investing in this partnership will be very important. The same donors who fund the CGIAR fund these networks. Can we fund them together so they do joint research? Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Excellent presentation and input in terms of really emphasizing partnerships and that we need to invest in partnerships. To the Daniel, the chairperson of the CEO of the Kenya National Farmers Federation. How do you as Kenyan farmers representatives bring together to unify farmers' voices in Kenya and bring them forward different decision-making bodies to inform their agendas, and what are some of the successful approaches that you have undertaken to make sure that you achieve that?
Thank you, the moderator. So I come from first of all, let me thank you everyone for the interest in this panel. Really, when you see the audience here, you realize that there is a deep interest in the connection between science, policy, and practice. So thank you to the audience. So I come from the Kenya National Farmers Federation, KENAF, which is the apex umbrella farmers organization in Kenya, representing about 1.4 million farmers spread across the country and representing all value chains from pastoralism to fisheries, aquaculture, crops, all value chains really in the country. Now, how do we bring the voice of farmers to different policy forums or policy decision-making organs in the country is how we are organized. The federation is membership-based. It is a not-for-profit and it is non-political. Our organization starts at the grassroots. The smallest organization unit in Kenya is called AWARD. That's where the farmers in AWARD, in different value chains meet together and elect a committee of 9 people to represent the interests of farmers at that level. From that level, you go to a level known as the sub-county, and then from the sub-county, you go to the county. Now, the county in Kenya is very important because this is a subnational government. Since 13 years ago, Kenya has a devolved governance system, and some of the functions have been devolved to the subnational level, which is called county. And Kenya has 47 counties. One of the functions that has been devolved is agriculture. So for the county level, agriculture is very important because these are county functions. And then all the counties in the country will converge at the national level through what is called the National Farmers Assembly, and then the annual general meeting. This is the apex decision-making organ at the Kenya National Farmers Federation. Now, going back to the county, we have an organ called the County Agricultural Sector Steering Committee, or CASCOM. So it is at the CASCOM where agricultural development issues at the county level are discussed and, of course, managed between the farmers, other stakeholders, and the county government, which is in charge of agriculture. So KNAF is represented at the CASCOM, and mostly the chair, the KNAF chair in a particular county represents the issues to do with farmers in the CASCOM. At the national level, we also have JASCOM, it's Joint Agricultural Sector Consultation and Coordinating Mechanism that coordinates issues to do with agriculture from across the country, from across the 47 counties, and works with the different CASCOMs across the country. Again, here in the JASCOM, KNAF is represented. Then again, we work very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development. We work with the Agriculture Committee in Parliament and in the Senate. And if you look at the channel, the issues from the grassroots to the sub-county, to the county, and to the national are channeled that way. Then KNAF is also a member of the East African Farmers Federation. So this is the body that looks at policy issues in the East African region. And then we are also a member of PAFO through, of course, the East African Farmers Federation, the Pan-African Farmers Organization, and globally we are a member of the World Farmers Organization, WFO. And so this is how we are able to bring issues to do with farmers from the grassroots to the subnational level, the county level, to the national, the regional level, the African continent, and of course, globally. So some of the issues we've looked at, obviously, that are relevant to the Kampala Declaration and what Africa wants to see in agricultural transformation in the coming years is one, of course, is research into practice, which is very important for this forum because a lot of times there's research that is happening in the CG centers, in the national agricultural research systems. But how is that research converted into practice so that farmers can leverage the research and make use of that research? So that is a thing that we look at and something we continue lobbying the government to continue supporting, bringing the research to the farmers. The other one is access to finance, and I'm happy the African Development Bank is represented here. They are putting their they are putting money into what they are preaching. How do we transform agriculture on the continent? And the African Development Bank is investing quite a bit on agricultural development and transformation. So access to finance is another policy area that we are looking at. Digitization, and we are part of what is called the mobilizing access to the digital economy. You realize that farmers, as technology, of course, improves, we are now even getting into artificial intelligence, but farmers really are not digitized. So also looking at how do we digitize farmers to enhance production and productivity, to enhance farmers' incomes, to enable farmers access credit, access inputs, soil testing facilities, all these things. If farmers are digitized, they'll be able to access this. Then the source, of course, youth in agriculture. This is an old story. Everyone talks about the farmers being old, not just in Kenya, but around the world. So how do we incentivize young people to get into agriculture? And then lastly is collaboration. Of course, you cannot do anything big by yourself. So we also look at how do we partner with national agricultural research systems, other stakeholders, the CG centers, and many other governments, NGOs, the UN system, because really that is the only way to transform agriculture and lift millions of people across the African continent, not just from poverty, but also create opportunities for employment, for wealth creation. And maybe lastly, I should mention trade, access to markets, structured markets. Of course, there's the African, free trade area that we really don't have. A lot of farmers do not even know how to leverage the opportunities available there. So those are some of the things that we are bringing from the grassroots to the different levels across the chain, like I've discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Professor Apollinaire, we're talking about livestock. I happen to be a livestock scientist also by training, so I'm really interested to hear your voice or your input on how can sustainable livestock systems or practices support climate adaptation and achieve food security in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me use this first opportunity as the local co-host to thank you for coming from different parts of the world to join us for this inaugural Science Week. It's been nothing but enjoyable and success. And I think we're here also celebrating the partnership that we have within the CGIAR centers. And on this, I want to acknowledge and thank many of the colleagues across the CG, but more importantly, our local supporter, the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization, for ensuring that we have this event plan and then we are delivering on it. So again, it's really about the partnership. Let me start my remarks by really bringing us back to the livestock sector. I'm delighted that the moderator is also an animal scientist and that the head of the IEA, the previous panel, managed to talk about livestock. Livestock is always the underserved and neglected commodity in our agricultural sector. But if I bring to you some of the facts, you will hear how livestock is actually very interconnected and will be and continue to be an important solution to address the challenges that we are all highlighting here. Globally, 60% of rural households continue to rely on livestock. I think that's really, really important. And you can have some economies driven up to 80% of their deriving up to 80% of their GDP from livestock. I don't want to stay really just general, but if I bring this to the country where we are sitting here today, livestock, the GDP of Kenya is driven by at least 10%. But if you look at the agricultural GDP in Kenya, you're looking at something like 40 to 50%. It's really an important sector. And 50% of the workforce in agriculture in Kenya is really supported by the livestock sector. And finally, we're talking about markets. Here, 30% of traded commodities, agricultural commodities, come from livestock, at least 30%. That's really the context in which we look at livestock. It's about GDP, it's about employment, it's about food security, it's about economic development. It's also about gender and social inclusion. The previous speaker just talked about youth. I think those are some of the areas that we really have to focus on. Our organization, the International Livestock Research Institute, we're really delighted to be hosted here and co-hosted in Ethiopia. And we work globally in 15 countries in Africa and also in Asia. We see livestock as a very complex sector. But if you break it down, we're looking at 3 production systems. We're looking at the pastoral systems, the semi-crop and livestock integrated system, and also the commercial systems. When you look at each one of these systems, our interventions and the challenges are going to be quite different. In the country, again, where we are, 70% of our meat come from the pastoral systems, and they're often the ones that are neglected. So I'm bringing this for you to see how this livestock sector is really an important driver for the solutions that we need to address. Going back to the question that was asked, if you look at climate change and food security as the challenges that we have to address, how do we feel climate change in the livestock sector? With the increasing temperature, you have decrease of milk production, you have less resilient animals that can no longer survive high temperature, you have scarcity of feed that must be available for farmers to feed their animals. And you also have populations that have to be displaced from one part of the country to another one. And those are, again, and many more the challenges that we face. What have we done to address this? We have demonstrated over the last decades that you cannot neglect gender, inclusion, and youth in the livestock sector. We have built technologies from animal health, from genetic improvement, from nutrition, and some of those have never been taken up because the gender dimension has not been considered. So one thing is gender, and we're very proud that within the CGIAR family, we have hosted a gender platform for many years and demonstrated that it's an important driver. And the portfolio that you have been listening to this week has gender as an accelerator. If we really want to accelerate, if we want to deliver solutions, looking at 2030 as an important checkpoint, we should not neglect gender. The other thing is, we have ensured that we understand what it takes to deliver animal source food to a cross range of our population. You imagine that without animal source food, the first 1,000 days of anybody coming into this world will be seriously affected. And our work has focused in making sure that animal source food are available to the cross range of our communities. The third one is when you're producing the food, we've talked about value chain and things like that. Perishables are the things that we derive from our sector, milk, meat, and things like that. Food safety has become an important issue. And some of our work has been about looking at food safety. It's one thing to produce. How can you take that food, your fish, your milk, your meat, and your eggs to people to consume safely? And we have used that to demonstrate that we can develop evidence to even support some of the policies. In Vietnam, for instance, we've done excellent work bringing the food safety dimension to support government interventions. Related to food safety, when you're looking at livestock, it's really about the environment. It's also about the health of people. One health approach, ensuring that we are looking at the health of animals, health of people who are supposed to consume the animal products, and also our environment, which is linked to the climate change that we are talking about, are really the nexus for us to bring some of our interventions. Classically, building on collaboration, we are able to build vaccines and things like that. But what's really important is for us to take some of those innovations to use. I want to finish by mentioning some of the work that we've done for the past 10 years, looking at how you can collect data from farmers. We have set up the African Dairy Genetic Gains Programs, which is really about ensuring that we support the farmers to have access to the right breed of animal, and be able to report the performance of those animals. When you capture such data, it then helps you to support the farmers to make the right decision. And looking into the future, this is how we can support farmers in Africa to make genetic gains and sustain those gains and even make more gains into the future. There are many other examples that really I can list, but we are limited by time. How do we see the future? We see the future as the future where our organization and partners should be about developing solutions that help reduce emission in the production system. How do you do that? We can do it from genetic improvement. We can also do it for improving animal health. We can also do it for better feed, looking at forage, better formulation to feed the animals. And ultimately, we want to make sure that the farmers have the choice to choose the right breed that fit in their systems, whether the temperature is high, humidity high, or low temperature in the highlands, lowlands. Those are the solutions that we want to create as part of the CGIAR in our portfolio 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final speaker in this panel is Mr. Baji from the Islamic Development Bank. Sir, could you explain to us how your partnership with the CGIAR strengthen food security and climate resilience while also ensuring inclusive economic growth?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. Ujambo to everybody here. Our role at the Multilateral Development Bank is to provide much needed finance to our member country, but also to provide advisory services. How are we going to do that? We have a policy based on three main policy triangles, can I say? A policy technically correct, politically supportable, but also economically implementable as well. Now, as I said this morning at the launch of the AgriLAC strategy, you have the technology, CGIAR system. Technology is with you, but not for you. How are we going to adopt for the African member countries, adapt, own, and disseminate such technology to tackle food insecurity and climate issues?
I think we at ISDB, we already provided technical financing element based on project and programs. We already dedicated $10.54 billion under our food security response program to manage such kind of challenges. We did not wait this Agri-Week, Science Week to start. We already started long time ago. We developed with Africa Rice, for example, a regional rice value chain program up to 15 member countries, and it's still going. We developed in 2022 with ITA, a regional cassava value chain program ongoing now, and the numbers are growing, still growing. We are preparing a couple of programs with ICRISAT, ICAADP, around this regional millet sorghum wheat value chain program. We already developed a program with ICRAF based on a regional soil fertility mapping program as the baseline for our agriculture investment. Last but not least, with our colleague from ILRI, we are now preparing a regional livestock value chain program for 10 member countries. In a nutshell, I think our partnership should be based on country needs. It's not a kind of mechanism based on top-down approach. We should consider engaging countries together based on collaboration. We need to partner for impact. We need to develop programs for development. And I think it could be great if we sit together, engaging commonly with member countries to leverage your comparative advantage. In a nutshell, I think the main words will be partnership for development and partnership for impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all three panels. Having listened and had the privilege and the opportunity to moderate these three panels, I have no doubt that the CGIAR, with its current leadership, is poised to really position food systems transformation in Africa to become part of the solution to the climate crisis. Thank you very much to everybody.
That's right. Once again, a round of applause for all our panelists this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, panelists. Thank you. And a special thank you to Dr. Frans Swanepoel for great moderation. Thank you, sir. Round of applause, please. I noticed that Dr. Ruben Echeverria said that I interviewed him 20 years ago when I was a TV star. I'm still a TV star. Oh, man. And Professor Apollinaire Dikeng, thank you so much for sponsoring this particular session. We appreciate that very much. On to the Latin America and the Caribbean. This will be our final session for the morning, folks. So I'd like you to welcome on stage. Our moderator for that will be Dr. Marcela Quintero, Associate Director General, Research Strategy and Innovation of the Alliance of Biodiversity and International at CIAT. Welcome. The panelists will include Mr. Ansari Hossein, Executive Director, Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CAADP, Dr. Jorge Ganoza, Head, National Institute for Agrarian Innovation, INIA, in Peru, Dr. Marilia Regini Nuti, Food Science Researcher in Sustainable Agriculture for Nutrition and Health at Embrape, Dr. Simon Heck, Director General, International Potato Center, Dr. Sarada Krishnan, Director of Programs at the Crop Trust. And finally, Honorable Dr. Victor Manuel Villalobos Arambula, former Secretary of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mexico.
Yes.
De nada. Dr. Quintero, take it away.
Is it ready? Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Innovation and collaboration, I think, has been the common denominator in all the conversation that we have had this week, and is more than ever than urgent to really do innovation in a collaborative way. So guess what? In the Africa segment, we talk about partnerships, collaboration, and this is also about what this panel is going to be about. Latin America, as other regions, are also navigating into pressing challenges: climate change, environmental degradation, food and nutritional insecurity is still in many places in Latin America. So as we have heard before, the CGIAR and their partners is a big global partnership. But I would like also to emphasize that it's a system as well. And what it means is that what we do here in Africa is also very relevant for other regions. And the same thing, what we do in Latin America is also very relevant for Africa, for example. I heard this morning about PARA, this great network here in Africa. Guess from where many of the beans are coming from. Many of the beans that are disseminated and multiplied by the PARA are coming also from Latin America. And that was possible because the work of the CGIAR as a system where we integrate capabilities and we make those capabilities and results to flow to wherever those are needed most. So this is about also emphasizing this. It's a partnership, but it's a system where we need to share the results, we need to share the resources, and we need to integrate better the capabilities. So in that regard, I would like to invite you to show a video that we have prepared for you, where we want to show what is the work that we have been doing together as a system and a partnership in Latin America. And then with this, we are going to kick off the conversation with the panelists. So please, the video.
Latin America and the Caribbean, a key region sustaining global food systems, today faces a defining challenge. Climate change is disrupting crops, food insecurity is rising, and fragile ecosystems are increasingly at risk. In response, AgriLAC Resiliente is strengthening the foundations for scaling science and innovation in agri-food systems across the region through collaboration and innovation. Led by the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT, together with CIMIT, IFPRI, and CIP, AgriLAC Resiliente broke barriers by bringing together science, technology, and local knowledge through applied research, digitalization, capacity building, and evidence-based policy making, establishing a strong foundation for scaling innovation and promoting productive, climate-resilient, and sustainable agriculture. Collaboration and knowledge sharing are at the heart of AgriLAC Resiliente. We have built a strong network, turning fields into living laboratories of progress, where farmers and scientists co-created, tested, and refined solutions that worked in real-world conditions. With platforms like Aclimate Guatemala and EOLO, more than 200,000 producers gain access to precise agroclimatic data, helping them plan smarter, mitigate risks, and increase productivity. Also, AgriLAC actively integrated a gender lens, ensuring that women's voices, knowledge, and leadership were central to innovation. The impact of AgriLAC went beyond farming. It empowered communities and created economic opportunities. For example, in Colombia, local brands brought local, value-added products to national and international markets, demonstrating that sustainable agriculture is also a path to economic growth. Through partnerships, AgriLAC contributed to the development of sustainable finance products. In Guatemala, for example, a digital-enabled credit product tailored to the needs of livestock producers was developed and tested. At the policy level, AgriLAC drove systemic changes by integrating climate-smart solutions into national strategies, as well as technically backstopping regional networks. The initiative ensured that scientific evidence informs high-level decision-making across the region. These achievements and a strong network of over 200 strategic partners are a sample of what AgriLAC brings to the new CGIAR Scaling for Impact program, a network of networks that will continue to foster the scaling of evidence-based solutions that tailor to regional, national, and local needs. It is time for science to effectively inform responsible scaling strategies in the region. Hand in hand with public-private partnerships, we can ensure that vulnerable communities are at the forefront of agricultural innovation. Because when science meets action, when knowledge fuels innovation, and when collaboration unites communities, anything is possible.
So we are starting a new chapter with the new CGIAR portfolio. And we are now in Latin America, starting this new chapter from what AgriLAC initiative was doing and how we potentialize this as part of the new scaling program of the CGIAR. So with this, I want to start with Simon Heck, Director General of the International Potato Center. And then based on your role in AgriLAC, and also on your previous experience, how do you think CIP can further support the scaling efforts going forward? Over to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Marcela, and thank you to all the partners in the AgriLAC initiative. We've been very proud to be part of this. Not only brings it together the different commodities the CGIAR have been working on for decades in Latin America, it's also situated us much more effectively, I believe, with our farming communities, with other stakeholders like enterprises, and at the policy level. Latin America, if I can comment on that as a very much a newcomer to Latin America personally, striking me as a difference to Africa, where I have worked personally for almost 30 years. Agriculture is different. It's very dynamic. It's high intensity. It's high capital investments. It's very diverse. And we have also then selected through AgriLAC those parts of the agri-food system where we really can make a difference through our work as the CGIAR. So that focus on impact is something that we take forward from this, working complementarily with other investments in the agriculture sector. Right? Latin America is one of the largest food exporters in the world, unlike Africa, for example. It has in the same countries a highly effective, efficient, world-class agricultural commodity chains in horticulture, for example, and as well as real food insecurity and malnutrition and environmental challenges. I think one of the enduring challenges in the region is how you bridge that seeming contradiction. How do you mobilize the competencies, the resources, the capacities in that very successful part of agriculture and apply it effectively to bridge some of the gaps in domestic food security, nutrition status, as well as how you reduce the environmental footprint of agriculture in Latin America. Right? Latin America is also known as the largest ecosystem service provider in the world. Right? It has the largest amount of biodiversity, up to 50% of all biodiversity worldwide is in the region, including a lot of agro-biodiversity. And here, if I can come to an example close to my heart, which of course is the potato. And CIP has been working in Peru. Very much appreciate the hospitality of government of Peru for over 50 years on potato. We have the world's largest gene bank on potato that serves over 100 countries in the world. And it is based, however, as Peru as the center of origin of potato. And the communities in the Andes Mountains are the guardians of that diversity and of that global resource. One question we have is how do we mobilize their capacity to help solve problems within the LAC regions, but also elsewhere? And how do they receive benefits from that? If I may cite one example, That's yes, building on the AgriLAC model, but then extending it, in this case, to Asia. We have been working in Vietnam, and colleagues from Vietnam are here who know this very well, to develop tropically adapted potato. Potato production globally is now moving into Asia. More than half of the world's potato is grown and consumed in Asia. Within Asia, it's moving into subtropical and tropical environments like India and Vietnam. The question is, what kind of potato do we really need to make that successful? And the answer to that question takes us back to Peru. It takes us back not just to the CIP gene bank, but into the mountains of Peru. And we have then struck a partnership with Vietnam, with Peru, and with one of the world's largest potato breeding companies based in the Netherlands. And together, we have developed new types of potato, tropical potato, and the first varieties have now been released in Asia. That is really a physical combination of genetic material from the highlands of Peru and commercial germplasm from European potato companies. And we have demonstrated that can work technically. We have excellent potato varieties now in the lowlands of Asia. It can work in terms of commercial success. We have agreed on market segmentation with that company. So some of the target markets are really kept aside for publicly released varieties, whereas others are more now focused on the commercial propagation and marketing by that company. And we have demonstrated how farmers in Peru benefit from that. We have great international mechanisms, and Sarada and others can speak to that later, that allow that, right? The International Treaty for Plant Genetic Resources allows benefit sharing. And we are mobilizing those mechanisms globally to scale up, to come back to your question, to scale up the partnership model that was developed with AgriLAC. And I think there is probably other examples in other commodities that can also apply similar approaches. Certainly for CIP and for our work in the region, in LAC, as well as here in Africa and in Asia, we want to take it forward like that, right? Crowding in, bringing in commercial investments is very important for scaling. And it is possible, and it is possible to combine benefits that are commercially sustainable, reduce environmental footprint because of better varieties that use less agrochemicals, and it helps improve incomes of farmers in the highlands of Peru and indirectly then also their nutrition status. If I may leave it at that, Marcela, for now.
No, thank you, Simon. And I think your example, potato, is exactly what I was trying to say, that the work that we do in these regions is for the regions, but also very relevant for other parts of the world. So thank you for that. And so also on your point that we need to mobilize and integrate better our capabilities, then with this, I want now to go to Ansari. Ansari, you are the Executive Director of the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute. And thank you for being with us today. So talking about this integration of capabilities, how can South-South cooperation support the work that your organization is doing?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone present here. I understand we also have persons online, so good day, good night, whichever part of the world you are in. Just to give a little background in terms of CAADP, for those who don't know CAADP, we are the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute. We are headquartered in Trinidad and Tobago, and we are present in 14 CARICOM member states. We were formed way back in 1974 to serve the agricultural research and development needs of the Caribbean community. So that in itself, being a partnership of 14 member states. And partnerships have been critical to us in fulfilling our R&D agenda. Partnerships and the resultant investments have enabled us to increase and strengthen our human resources, our institutional resources, and of course our financial resources to meet the demands of our stakeholders and to create sustainable impact in the region. Throughout these partnerships, we have been able to drive innovation in the region, enable knowledge exchange, access technical expertise, and new technologies that weren't readily available in our part of the world. We're able to share resources, provide international training opportunities for many persons in the region and even our staff. Partnerships is also a core value in our strategic plan 2024 to 2028. In terms of South-South cooperation, it is an important component of our strategy. It is an area where we are working on expanding and also developing, especially now given the changing dynamics of the development aid that we heard about earlier, the geopolitical conflicts going around different parts of the world, and of course, the recent economic instability. Countries in the Global South, we share similar development challenges, and this strategy will help us to find solutions to these shared challenges, as well as build capacity and ensure regional cohesion. We can also achieve economies of scale through the South-South cooperation and overcome some of these challenges that are associated with our small size. Some of the examples of South-South cooperation that CAADP has been engaged in over the years, we had an example of importation of Brazilian green dwarf coconut seedlings from Brazil to Guyana and Dominica. We introduced cassava varieties to Dominica. From CIAT, we worked with CGIAR in Colombia on capacity building workshops. For staff in Ministries of Agriculture, we introduced taro varieties from the Pacific into the Caribbean, conducted evaluation trials. We identified the ones that are most tolerant and productive, and those are now widely used in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have also requests from persons in Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica for these varieties. We collaborated with Biodiversity International and IIT in Nigeria to introduce Black Sigatoga tolerant banana and plantain varieties in Dominica, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Guyana. We have worked to commence with Embrapa in Brazil to test rice varieties in Belize. We work with INIFAP in Mexico to conduct research on soybean, coconut, soursop. We collaborated with CC in Mexico as well to introduce tissue culture material in terms of coconut to Dumrep and St. Lucia. We work with IICA to evaluate biofortified beans in Belize and bunchy top tolerant papaya varieties in Barbados. We work with Volveg in Taiwan to introduce new varieties of crops of interest in several territories in the Caribbean. We have an ongoing collaboration presently with APC and CIAT Biodiversity Alliance and AgroSavia in Colombia to pilot suitable digital technologies to improve agriculture production in St. Vincent, Grenadines, Guyana, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis. Our scientists in the past had benefited from SIP, a study tour to SIP in Peru. We worked with IICA to train farmers and ministry officials, and the list goes on. We work with CAADP in Colombia to facilitate knowledge exchange and build capacity for persons in the Caribbean. We also had training opportunities in China. So we work with across the board, south, south, north, south, everything. So working together in closing is a fundamental part of the way we operate. We recognized a long time ago that no one institution has all the resources required to do all that is needed. We must work together if we are to really get things done in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ansari. And actually very impressive to see not only the collaboration within the region, but already with Africa and Asia. This is impressive, and as you said, it's about sharing the resources, and I think this is now more important than ever. So on that same topic, interregional collaboration, and also linking with what Simon said, the importance of the diversity that we are helping to conserve and use. Then with this, I want now to go to Sarada, the Director of Programs of the Crop Trust, because interregional collaboration, I think, is super important for the type of work that you, the Crop Trust, are doing. So how do you see these type of collaborations, how important they are to ensure the availability and accessibility of diverse genetic resources to support sustainable agriculture globally? So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Marcella, and good afternoon, everyone. So for those of you who do not know the Crop Trust, our mandate is to ensure the conservation of crop diversity in perpetuity. And so the way we do it is we have three main pillars in our new 2030 strategy. And the first one is we provide stable long-term financing, and we have our financing model is through our endowment fund. And it is an in perpetuity fund for the essential operations of gene banks. And then we provide technical support to gene banks on key activities that ensure that gene bank operations are performed at optimal conditions. And that is what we call our system-wide services. And we provide technical support on data management as well as quality management. And then the third pillar is to raise awareness between public and private sector on the importance of conserving crop diversity. So in our pillar 2, the technical support, that is where we work with national, we work with, in all our pillars, with all the partners, but with national, regional, and international gene banks, the system-wide services of pillar 2 is we are very prominent through our projects. And what we do in data management is we work on 2 different portals. One is the Genesis, where data from gene bank accessions is uploaded into Genesis. And for use, this is a very critical database because any user who wants to identify what genetic material is preserved in gene banks, they can go to the Genesis portal and then make requests to gene banks through that system. And then the Green Global Community Edition is a gene bank management tool, which provides the operation, the workflow of the gene bank. You can manage it through the Green Global Community Edition. So we offer training and support in both these quality management system as well as the data management. And we also offer monthly communities of practice. So any of the gene banks who are not part of our communities of practice are welcome, always welcome to join those communities of practice, whether you are implementing Genesis or not. And we offer it in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French. And then the quality management system is we work with our partners and provide customized quality management for your specific conditions of your gene bank. So not all gene banks are the same. So, and all your conservation methods are not the same. So we offer specific tailored methodology for your quality management system. And we help you develop standard operating procedures for different activities within your gene bank. And as part of a global system, one of the key things is safety duplication of your collections. And if your collections are not safety duplicated in at least 2 other locations, if a disaster strikes your gene bank, the chances of you losing your collections are so high. So in order to prevent that, as part of FAO standards, we recommend 2 levels of safety duplication. And through one of our projects in our BOLD project, we worked, one of our work packages, we worked with 42 centers around the globe to provide funding for equipment, for regeneration of plant material in order to safety duplicate at Svalbard Global Seed Vault. And many of the partners were also in Latin America. One example is in Suriname, rice variety, the maroon rice that had been brought from Africa to Suriname many years ago, which the maroon community had been conserving in Suriname. We helped them to regenerate and safety duplicate. And these are precious genetic resources. If lost, we cannot get them back. And then finally, we also do emergency funds. With the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, we have an emergency reserve. And any gene bank that is in a dire condition, either due to conflict or due to climate catastrophe, any of you are welcome to apply for emergency fund to ensure that these genetic resources are not lost. So those are the different ways that we work with national, regional, and international gene banks around the world to ensure that these genetic resources are protected for future generations.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for keeping this interregional network of collaboration for the sake of the conservation of the agricultural diversity. And also thank you on behalf of all the CGIAR for the support that you bring to us, because this is a core part of our mission. So thank you for that. And then again, innovation and collaboration. And we know in Latin America, Brazil is a pole of innovation. And we have here Marilia representing Embrapa. What we can learn from you, Marilia, from Brazil, in terms of how we can manage better innovation and collaboration in agricultural research.
Thank you, Marcela. And thank you on behalf of Embrapa, thank you for the organizers for inviting us. For those who don't know who's Embrapa, Embrapa is the Brazilian Research Agriculture Corporation in Brazil. And we have been collaborating in the region for more than 50 years already. I think I put some examples. I can say that in Brazil, collaboration and innovation intersect through initiatives like the ABC Plan Plus, which promotes sustainable agriculture practices to combat climate change. As a key contributor, Embrapa develops technologies supporting adaptation and low-carbon agriculture. A prime example is the Integrated Crop Livestock Forest System, ILPF, who has expanded 18 million hectares, enhancing productivity and resilience. This growth is driven by public-private partnerships, knowledge exchange, and supportive policies, including special and differential funding. Embrapa also partners in innovation with the private sector. And in this week, we have been discussing how important is we partner with the private sector. So one example is the Bayer in the Pro Carbono program, pioneering sustainable practices that boost productivity while sequestering carbon. This collaboration is shaping carbon market protocols and advancing carbon monitoring tools, seeming a global benchmark. Furthermore, Brazil is in the use of bioinputs, and Embrapa is, I didn't listen a lot about bioinputs in this meeting, and I think this is something that we can collaborate together. One of the Embrapa innovation is like Auras, a drought-tolerant biological product for soybean and corn. These solutions demonstrate how partnership and scientific research can address agriculture challenges while contributing to climate resilience. Through these collaborative efforts, Brazil offers valuable insights into integrating partnerships leading to innovation. We eagerly anticipate expanding the collaboration with the new signed agreement with MOU in Embrapa and the CGIAR. And Embrapa also facilitates the stronger linkage between researchers, policymakers, farmers, through its extensive collaborative network. I was partly involved with the BioForte network in the last 25 years, so I am going to talk this as an example. The BioForte network exemplifies this by promoting biofortified crops to combat micronutrient deficiencies. With over 200 partners, we established 200 demonstration units in Brazil, distributed BioForte seeds and seedlings to over 1 million households, and expanded local agriculture across 15 Brazilian states. Local biofortification hubs and governance committees ensure that the technology dissemination is demand-driven and inclusive, benefiting vulnerable communities such as family farmers, indigenous groups, and agrarian reformer settlers. Capacity building is a core aspect, with Embrapa conducting in these 20 years around 14,000 training sessions across Latin America and the Caribbean. Our international collaboration with CIAT, CIMIT, and CIP further extended the impact of biofortification through hands-on training and propagation, post-harvest techniques, and product development. With the strategic financial support of approximately $5 million over 20 years, Embrapa efforts on biofortification provided a scalable model for sustainable innovation. In summary, Embrapa biofortification research exemplifies how innovations can improve agricultural resilience, food security, and nutrition while addressing global challenges like malnutrition. And one thing is, I am very proud, and it's important to point out in this particular theme that we have an intense collaboration with the Alliance Biodiversity International and CIAT and all the local NARS in the region, not only in Latin America, but with the Caribbean. And this program allowed the LAC team to implement the use of nutritional density crops that paved the road for the AgriLAC program. So this was for us, I mean, we started and the continuation is the AgriLAC Resiliente program. That is a success today. And I would like to close calling that the biofortification program is one of the Embrapa proposals to integrate the Global Alliance Against Poverty and Hunger. That was a proposal from Brazil to the G20 and was approved for several countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilia, and thank you for highlighting the importance of starting new chapters, building upon the previous successes. So thank you very much. And with that, and again, on collaboration, I would like now to go to Jorge Ganosa from INEA, Peru. And Jorge, the same, I mean, where do you see from the perspective of Peru the opportunities to collaborate more with the regional and international networks to keep advancing agricultural innovation and knowledge sharing, as has been pointed out very importantly by Marilia. It's also sharing our knowledge and also building more capacities. So over to you, Jorge. And Jorge is going to be speaking in Spanish, but you will see the transcript on the screen. Thank you, Jorge. Gracias.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am happy in Nairobi, to be in Nairobi. El INEA Perú tiene muchas formas de colaborar con la red internacional y también redes regionales. Una de las grandes fortalezas que tenemos como país es que somos un centro de origen de muchos cultivos, entre ellos la papa, el maíz amiláceo, la quinoa, etc. Entonces, lo que buscamos nosotros es unirnos mucho más con las redes internacionales y las redes regionales, porque realmente estos cultivos que son una fortaleza, nosotros los tenemos en nuestros bancos de germoplasma, en las zonas de agrobiodiversidad ubicadas en los Andes y también a través del CID, ya que lo comentó Simón. El objetivo del INEA es fortalecer las capacidades de los agricultores, porque realmente ese es el servicio que nosotros buscamos hacia ellos. Y ahí estamos abocados, por eso es que estas redes regionales y redes internacionales nos permiten realmente intercambiar conocimientos, experiencias y sobre todo transferencia de tecnologías. No hay nada que crear, sino cómo la adaptamos a nuestros países. Y esa es la forma de cooperar. Nosotros ya conformamos redes regionales y redes internacionales. Y entre ellas tenemos el CGIAR, con los cuales trabajamos hace mucho tiempo. El Foragro, que es una plataforma donde integramos países de Latinoamérica. Y el Fontagro, que está conformado por 15 países 14 de Latinoamérica y el Caribe y 1 de España, en el cual mi persona es el vicepresidente. Y tenemos temas muy importantes en el cual tocamos como agricultura, lo que es ganadería y la parte forestal, que es muy importante. Y es financiado, aquí lo resaltante, por los mismos países. Y si nosotros, los países, financiamos los proyectos de investigación a nivel regional. Y esta plataforma importante de Foragro debería también ser una forma de estrategia, de comunicación y de integración entre los países de acá de África. Por otro lado, nosotros también venimos fortaleciendo lazos con instituciones internacionales especializadas en la conservación, como el Centro Nórdico de Recursos Genéticos, que administran la bóveda global de semillas de CGIAR, para garantizar la preservación a largo plazo de especies para la seguridad alimentaria. Además, se busca intercambiar conocimientos con los investigadores de INIA sobre la conservación de granos andinos, promoviendo estrategias conjuntas para su protección y mejoramiento genético. Asimismo, fomentamos la postulación a financiamiento de cooperación internacional, porque eso es importante, ¿no? Poder realmente no solamente buscar recursos locales, sino también la cooperación internacional, pero buscando intereses que puedan beneficiar tanto al país que nos apoya como al país local. Asimismo, a través de las plataformas mencionadas se vienen desarrollando acciones para abordar la temática de cambio climático, que es un problema mundial, world problem. Prácticamente nosotros estamos sufriendo, igual que todos los países del mundo, por lo que es inundaciones, escasez de agua, plagas, enfermedades y todo lo que corresponde a los cambios, a los efectos del cambio climático. Y ahí tenemos que juntarnos para poder ayudarnos y poder superar este gran problema. Y también quiero mencionar que el CGIAR en Perú se constituyó como miembro en el año 1998 y se formó la Secretaría Técnica del CGIAR. ¿Qué pasa con esta Secretaría Técnica? Esta Secretaría ayuda a financiar proyectos de investigación con dinero del Ministerio de Desarrollo Agrario de Perú, pero participan instituciones del CGIAR para intercambiar conocimientos que nos ayuden a resolver los problemas regionales, sobre todo en lo que tiene que ver con el cambio climático. Realmente hay mucho trabajo por hacer en cuanto a las relaciones de cooperación. No sé si Marcela tú lo traduces, todos somos de hueso, somos de carne, tenemos la misma sangre y lo que nos falta es acercarnos mucho más y olvidarnos de los resentimientos, el supuesto racismo que pueda existir para buscar la seguridad alimentaria y la paz entre todos nosotros. Gracias.
Thank you, Jorge. He has asked me to translate something that is, at the end of the day, we all are the same. We have the same blood running through ourselves. We should avoid any friction, any cultural or ethnic difference, and trying to work together for the food security of the world. Thank you, Jorge. And Jorge, is really, I would like also to thank, because as he mentioned it in the last part, since 1997, Peru, the government of Peru, decided to make an annual contribution to the CGIAR to strengthen the collaboration between the CGIAR centers working in Latin America and the national centers of Peru. I have witnessed how these resources has catalyzed that collaboration, and we really appreciate the support of the government of Peru on this. So I think it's a good example on how we can share resources in a recurrent way. Gracias, Jorge. por la contribución de Perú al CGIAR. Okay, now from Brazil, Peru, let's go to Mexico. And I would like now to go to Victor. Victor, you were the former Secretary of Agriculture and Rural Development in Mexico. And we know also the great support of the Mexican government to support the agricultural innovation systems in Mexico, and also in collaboration with the CGIAR. So I would like to ask to you, what role do regional and international collaborations play on triggering these innovation systems, and what we can learn from the agricultural innovation system in Mexico to scale climate resilient practices in Latin America and the Caribbean? So what we can learn, and I know you bring something to display in the screen. Please, if you can help us with this, just to illustrate this.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. It's a privilege to be here in this panel. Thank you. And thank you, Marcela, for the question. As you already heard, I'm from Mexico. And Mexico, along with some Central American countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua, together, we conform what is called Mesoamerica. And Mesoamerica, it's a very important region for agriculture. Why? Because Mesoamerica is a center of origin, a center of domestication of a very important food crops. Among them, maize, beans, tomato, cucurbits, chili peppers, and many other different vegetables and fruits that were domesticated in this important center of origin of many important crops. Our ancestors were cultivated those crops together in a system that is called milpa. So for centuries, they guarantee food security for the poorest families in the south of Mexico with this innovative system in which beans, corn, chili peppers, and cucurbits cultivated and were growing together. More recently, due to different factors like climate change, of course, problems associated with new pests and diseases, problems with soil fertility and water scarcity, the production of this system declined and was in a risk to contain and to maintain the food security of this important region. That's why, about 15 years ago, the Secretary of Agriculture, along with CIMIT, developed a strategy together, which is called Masagro. So Masagro was created with the aim to resolve the problem in the south tropical area of Mexico, in which there are a large populations in rural areas that were suffering for the impacts of climate change and other different factors. So CIMIT and the Mexican government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, developed this strategy that was a package of technology to provide improving seeds, to assist in the extension service, to help them to properly manage the water and soil, and with the idea to raise the productivity again and sustain the family agriculture in such an important region. So as a result, the result of this implementation of this package was based on partnership. Why? Because the scientists from CIMIT, the federal government, along with the local authorities, the scientists and private sector together, they brought solutions to this multifactorial problem in that particular region. So nowadays, there is about 500,000 families being beneficiated for the result of the Masagro implementation in this region. So it has been covered about 1 million hectares being beneficiated with the system. And now we are so proud of the results. And this important story didn't end here because the scientists from CIMMYT decided to export this system to Central American countries. And now Guatemala and Honduras, they have 10 hubs in which 75,000 hectares are being beneficiated with the same system. But more, after the experience in Central America and Mexico, now CIMMYT is being exported, Masagro, to 3 countries here in Africa, Tanzania, Zambia, and Malawi. So the results of the Masagro implementation, Southern Mexico, Central America, and now in 3 countries in Africa, we are so proud and we are so in favor of continue providing assistance in order to expand the scope and the benefits of Masagro in any country that can adopt this strategy, this technology. So we will continue supporting CIMMYT. We will continue supporting the scientists that are particularly engaged in Masagro program, and then Mexico will certainly maintain the support to CIMMYT through this important regional program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. And I think your example of Masagro is very relevant to also, demonstrate innovation is not only about the technologies alone. If those doesn't come together with institutional innovations that can accelerate the delivery of the technological innovations, then we are not going to reach so far. So I think Masagro is also a very good example on how the work that has been happening in Latin America for many years. Marilia was saying 50 years, and we have been there as CGIAR in the region also for that long, how relevant and how it's also serving the needs of other regions, as is the case now of Masagro being exported to here, to Africa. So thank you also to the government of Mexico for the sustained support of the CGIAR over the past year, and also for, thank you for reaffirming the support of Mexico for the years to come. So thank you for this. So, yeah, so with this, I would like to wrap up with some key messages. As we said at the beginning, CGIAR is a partnership, but it has to work as a system. If we really want to strengthen the share of resources, the share of knowledge, the share of institutional and technological innovation. The second one is that I believe that we have all the ingredients here in the system, in the partnership, in the extended partnership, because the CGIAR works with many other partners. But I think we need to do more for South-South collaboration. And these examples, like the Masagro one, or the ones mentioned by Simon or Marilia or others on how we are sharing knowledge and innovation across regions, is evidence that this is possible and could be very powerful. But I think we need to think, and probably as part of the partnership strategy that Ruben was mentioning in the previous panel, how we can strengthen and create the right mechanism to really foster South-South collaboration. And the third one has to be with, I think, highlighting what is at the core of the transformation of the agri-food systems. And I think the CGIAR and its partners has a unique opportunity to combine the efforts that we do on the conservation of agricultural diversity with technologies and institutions to foster the use of that diversity that can unlock also many benefits to achieve the resilience and sustainability that we need in the food systems. And again, I think we have the parts. We need now to combine that better and to create the right mechanisms to collaborate more. And I think this Science Week has been already a good demonstration that this can happen, because I have heard about many collaborations and conversations around it also in the corridor this week. So I think it's in our hands and in our control to foster this further collaboration. So with this, I would like to close this segment, and also to thank all of you for your insights, for sharing all the progress that we have made together. And I invite you to stay here for a photo. And I also would like to invite the other speakers from the previous panels to come here for a photo group. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Let's have all the speakers from the morning sessions up on stage, please, for family photo. And just to remind you, the next plenary will be at 4 p.m. this afternoon. Next plenary, 4 p.m. All speakers, please come up. Thank you, Dr. Quintero. Tomorrow. Oh, again, pardon me. The next plenary will be 4 p.m. tomorrow. Not today, tomorrow. My bad. Yeah, you? Swatini. I've been there. Mbabane.
Can I be here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Look everywhere. Yeah. Right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great lunch, everybody. Bon appetit. Chakula chema. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And enjoy the rest of the day.